What's up, teammates? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're gonna work on that squat mobility. Now, your squat may be affected by one of two things. You could have tight hips, or you could have tight ankles, or perhaps both. Today, we're gonna work on some dynamic stretches that you can do before you squat, whether it's heavy or simply body weight, to help you get a little bit more range of motion to make your movement a little bit more efficient. You'll need to have access to a few pieces of equipment. I have some resistance bands here. You'll also need some weight, one that you can smash out on, another one to give you a little bit of accommodating resistance. You'll need a raised platform, and you'll also need something to attach this band to. Now, I'm gonna demonstrate my squat before I do any of these exercises. I have not warmed up yet, and I don't have the best squat mobility. And then afterwards, I'll go through a range of motion test so that you can see the difference. So when I do these, I want you to pay attention to my hips, notice my depth, also notice my knees, whether they're caving in or out or staying neutral, and then also notice my angle of my chest. Ideally, when I squat, my chest stays upright, my knees stay out, and my heels stay down. You might notice that whenever I squat, my knees start to cave in just slightly, and my chest will lean forward. I'm not trying to exaggerate these things. This is just where my body goes naturally unless I really fight for it. So the first exercise we have here is a banded ankle distraction. You'll want to attach your band to something sturdy. If you don't have a band, you can do the same thing with a weight on your knee. I'll show you that in a second. But essentially what this band is doing is loosening up all that fascia in the front of the ankle to allow just a little extra flexion and range of motion. So what I'm doing is pushing that knee out over that toe. I'm gonna wiggle it to the right, wiggle it to the left, getting all that range of motion so that when I squat, my hips don't have to battle my ankle for a good position. So naturally my knee will go out over my toe, my heel will stay down, and then my hips can take the load as opposed to my ankle trying to flex and getting all up on those toes whenever I squat. So the same thing can be accomplished with a weight. So set that weight up on that knee. Same deal, let that ankle go out over that toe. You can wiggle left, wiggle right, make sure that heel stays down. And from here, we should be able to get a little extra range of motion. Notice I'm not just holding it there. I like dynamic movement, especially when warming up. The next exercise will focus on the back of the ankle. So this is gonna be up towards the bottom of your calf. Don't get that Achilles tendon. It's not gonna feel good and you could just cause damage. So from here, I'll set my lower calf on top of that kettlebell. From here, I can point, flex, make sure I'm getting that fascia broken up. And then if you want a little extra, add that other ankle on top, add some weight, really dig in. This might not feel too good, but like I said, this is gonna allow a little extra range of motion in your ankles. So you can circle, make sure you're pointing, flexing, getting all of those points on that bottom calf. You can work your way up, work your way down. If some of you guys tend to have tight calves anyways, go ahead and just get your entire calf. There's nothing wrong with that. The tighter that calf is, the tighter that ankle joint is altogether, the harder it's gonna be to squat. I feel like the ankles are a very overlooked portion of mobility when it comes down to the squat or just movement in general. We're always on our feet, so you know the ankles don't ever get rest. So the next exercise we have is gonna be smashing out some glutes. So I'm gonna cross over that leg on top of my knee and on the back side of my glute, right where those abductors are engaged, I'm going to just rock back and forth. You can use a lacrosse ball for this, you can use a softball for this, whatever you need to kind of smash that out in the back. It's ideal to cross that leg so that you can get a little extra flexion in there, kind of pull those muscles apart so that you can really dig in there and break up that fascia. Now the next exercise will require no equipment. So if you have tight hips, this will be difficult for you to do. So from here, I'll just set my feet about shoulder width apart, about 90-degree angle with the legs, and I'm just going to rotate my knees down to the floor. So I got this knee to the left, this knee to the left, and then I will rotate back to the right. So you're gonna feel that stretch all the way down your leg into your hip, and that's where you wanna be. To make this more difficult, go wider with your stance. So from here, it takes a little bit more range of motion to get that knee down to the floor. Get about 20 of these. Okay, the next exercise is gonna be a good old abductor leg lift. So if you don't have one of these cool little resistance bands, you can do this with no resistance band at all. But for demonstration purposes, I will show you with the band, and for those without it, that's just fine. So I will start in a laying down position. You can do this with straight legs, or you can do this with flexed legs. That's up to you. But from here, I'm gonna lift and hold. Notice I'm not just pushing my knee out, which you can, that's not a bad idea, but this is gonna get you a little extra abduction in here. The reason this is important is when we squat, we wanna be forcing those knees away from each other. You'll see some people squat and their knees get caved in. That's not necessarily where we wanna be, so I'm gonna lift that leg, hold for a second, and really get those abductors on fire. So the same thing can be done with straight legs, lift, hold. You're really gonna feel this burn outside of your hips, maybe in the glute area. Make sure that you get both sides. So the next exercise we will have will be same deal. Gonna be working these abductors, really force those knees out. This will be a monster walk. So I'm gonna stand with my feet outside of the train tracks. So imagine I have train tracks running in between my feet. I'll take a step and I'm going to stay low. So I'm pretending that there's a roof over my head right now. So from this position, I'll take about 20 steps forward and backward, focusing on forcing those knees out, keeping that band apart, and keeping my feet outside of those train tracks. This is a slow and controlled movement, so don't just waddle through this really quick. Make sure you stay low, like I said. There's a ceiling over your head, keeping those knees out nice and controlled. Also with that, we have side monster steps. So I'll assume that half squat position, forcing those knees out, and then I'm going to take micro steps, staying low with that ceiling right over my head. I'll get about 20 steps to the right, followed by 20 steps to the left. And then our last exercise is going to be a squat hold plus a knee press. I'll kind of describe this. So I'm gonna sit down here if I wanna use something to help me stay upright, forcing those knees out, keeping my heels down. I will press into that knee, kind of stretching out those adductors. Notice this is still dynamic movement. I'm not holding any static poses. There's nothing wrong with static poses. I just believe you warm up a little bit better if you get some dynamic movement. Static stretches are probably best after you work out. So get about 20 on one leg, and then you will switch and get about 20 on the other leg. So I'm just forcing that knee out, keeping that heel down. This is gonna just add a little bit of extra range of motion into that hip joint. So I've gone through all my warm-up exercises. Took me about 10 minutes. Now from here, we retest. So I'll set my feet. Notice my chest stays a little more upright. My knees are a little more out. My hips are dropping a little bit lower. It's definitely less painful. So there you have it, teammates. There's a few dynamic exercises that you can do out there before you begin squatting. It only took me about 10 minutes. If you don't have access to these pieces of equipment, you don't necessarily need them. You can still go through those ranges of motion to kind of loosen up your ankles and your hips and to help out that squat mobility. See you out there, teammates.